dress had a hidden pocket, and what I found inside an hour before the ceremony destroyed me. I always said I didn't care if my dress had lace, sparkles, or a train. The only thing I really wanted was for it to have pockets. Silly, right? But something about slipping my hands into those hidden seams made me feel grounded, safe, like I could hold on to a little piece of myself in the middle of a stressful and beautiful day. I grew up watching my mother iron other people's gowns for a living, and she used to tell me that a dress with pockets was a dress that let a woman keep her own hands to herself. I never forgot that. So when I found my dress, it felt like fate. Ivory silk, delicate cap sleeves, and yes, pockets. I cried in the dressing room, not because of how I looked, but because I could finally picture it all. The aisle, the vows, the forever. It wasn't just a dress. It was a promise to myself that everything I'd endured had finally led to something beautiful. Cole loved to say he wasn't a details person, but he always looked at me like I was the only steady thing he had left. We'd been together 6 years. I moved across the country for him, left the only city I'd ever known, and let the friendships I'd spent a decade building go quiet one by one. I dropped out of my program the semester before I would have finished because he said he needed me present, not buried in books. I emptied my savings twice, once when he lost his job, and once when the second job didn't stick. I told myself that love was supposed to cost something, that the people who stayed were the ones who paid, and when his father Walt was diagnosed with a rare aggressive cancer, I was the one who stayed. Cole said he couldn't sit in those waiting rooms without falling apart, so I went instead. I drove Walt to every appointment I was allowed to attend. I learned the names of medications I couldn't pronounce. I sold my car to cover a clinical trial the insurance wouldn't touch, and I told myself a car was just metal. I held Walt's hand the night the doctor supposedly gave him months, and I cried harder than his own son did. Cole proposed a week later in the hospital chapel with a ring he said he'd bought by selling his father's watch collection, so that something good could come out of all that grief. It felt like sorrow and hope tangled into one promise, and I said yes without even breathing. The morning of the wedding, my tailor dropped off the freshly pressed gown. I unzipped the garment bag like it held my entire future. My bridesmaids had left to grab food, so I was alone in the bridal suite when I started to steam it, watching the wrinkles fall out of the silk one slow pass at a time. I slipped my hands into the pockets the way I had 100 times before, just to feel that small private comfort, and my fingers touched something inside. It was a thick, grainy paper, folded once. I pulled it out, expecting maybe a sweet note from Cole, some quiet message he'd hidden for me to find alone. My heart actually leapt. Was this another chapel moment, another gesture meant to remind me why I'd given up so much? It was a photograph. Walt, tanned and laughing, a birthday cake in front of him, dated 3 weeks ago, in a city 2,000 miles from any hospital he'd ever claimed to be dying in. On the back, in hurried handwriting, it said, "He was never sick, you paid for all of it, I couldn't watch you sign your name to this. Cole doesn't know I sent it. No signature, no explanation." I stared at the man I had grieved before he was even gone. My stomach dropped. I didn't scream, I didn't faint. I just stood there, slowly suffocating in a dress I had loved an hour ago. I thought about every treatment I was never allowed to sit in on, every bill that came printed on plain paper from a home printer instead of a hospital, every time Walt took a sudden turn for the worse the same week my paycheck cleared. I thought about the watch collection Cole swore he sold, and how I once saw the same watch on his father's wrist, and told myself I was mistaken. I thought about how quiet his family always went whenever I asked which hospital, which doctor, which floor. I thought about how I had called all of it love, and how love had been the exact thing they were counting on. I sat on the edge of the hotel bed. I read the back of the photo again and again, each time hoping the words might rearrange themselves into something I could survive. They didn't. So I got up, zipped the dress back into the bag, and placed the photograph inside, tucked deep into the folds of silk like a secret burial. I walked out of the hotel, still wearing the same flats I'd bought for dancing. Cole texted me later asking where I was. I just replied, "Check the pocket in my wedding dress." It was hours later by the time he wrote back, begging me to trust him and come back. He never denied a single word of it, and I never replied.